It is our tradition to give a blessing at moments like this. And we start it like this. Grandfather, Muanam, thank you for all things. Thank you for our families, for our friends, for people that we don't know. Grandfather, bless the spirit of all those that come here and all those that we're thinking about, wherever they may be. Bless the wonderful people who keep this historical thing going. These wonderful people who share their history with all ages, from young kids to the very old. Let them remember how valuable they are. And this troop of people who've come here to honor our family, Buffalo soldiers, people who were chased here, sometimes in a good way and sometimes not. Let us remember their legacy, how good they are to us, that they remind us that our history is truly important. We are blessed and we are honored to be here. Thank you, Grandfather. To'oya, to'e. Aho. Blessings to everyone. Thank you all for coming.
Present arms.
We just had a ceremony, a blessing ceremony, and what we were doing is providing good tidings and good blessings to everyone. All people that we know, people that we don't know, even our enemies, hoping that someday they'll become our friends, and that they'll see it our way maybe, or that we'll see it their way maybe. History tells us that we are never going to have the answers. We will be judged by history later. So our blessing was about the historical context of everyone having good in them. Blessings are for everyone. They don't belong to a culture. They don't belong to a person. And so that's what we provided today to honor the Historical Society, the people here that put this stuff on. You know, they're providing such a service of history, that history is beautiful, that there's so much to learn from it, and that they're keeping that alive. And I wanted to provide the blessing to them, for them bringing these other great people here to share their history.
Arms.
Well, my great-grandfather, Jack John Taylor, was a Buffalo soldier. He was with the 24th Infantry, and he was an interpreter for the tribe back in the 1870s and 80s. And, you know, lived with them. You know, learned all of their history, learned their backgrounds, learned all about their lives. How did they do things? Where did they do things? And he learned their language, and he was able not only to speak with them at their level, but also to speak with others about what their concerns truly were. And then in the 1890s, he ended up marrying my great-grandmother, Kitty Cloud, who was Chief's adopted daughter. So being able to convey all of that, that's what I've been able to do most of my life.
Start investing in something that's more, I'm more comfortable with.
So that one you said started out with the black powder.
Yes.
With
yes.
the flint then, correct?
Yes, right there. As you can see, it says black powder.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. These, of course, these are all replicas of everything.
Right.
I have been a member of this organization for 18 years. I joined the organization upon my retirement, and 18 years ago, and I have been enjoying every moment of those 18 years since. Our troop have 26 members, okay? 12 of them are mounted, meaning that they ride horses. 14 of them do other things. For instance, we have a 4-man ground crew, because during our horse performances, props have to be put up, and they have to be put up on time so that the next event can take place without much downtime. We have a group of infantrymen, which is 4. The ladies are infantry. The 38th Infantry, they're the ones who do the maneuvers with the long rifles and march in and march out. And then we have the sales side of it, the business side. There are 3 people over there, individuals, who who man our tent where we sell items for fundraisers so that we can continue to move forward.
So this are only lollipops, and they're sweet. They don't actually have a sweet flavor.
Well, they look great.
I've been in education for over 40 years. You just don't throw that away. And I still had the yearning to express myself and to share ideas with people. And the Buffalo Soldiers of the American West has given me that opportunity. You want to learn something every day. It gave me that opportunity to learn. Thank you, Sergeant Bell. I would be remiss if I didn't tell you how I, an old man as I am, got involved with the Buffalo Soldiers. I was a young man at the time. My sons and I were at a parade in Brighton, Colorado, which is where we live, where we're all from. And we were standing there, and the parade was going by. And down the street, I see these men in these color uniforms. And as they got closer, I realized they were African American men. And I said out loud to myself, who are those guys? And the Anglo guy standing next to me said, those are Buffalo Soldiers. Here I am, a history major, a teacher, had no idea about the Buffalo Soldiers. I knew right then that I had to know more. Our mission as the Buffalo Soldiers of the American West is to inform and to educate. We do that in many, many different ways. One, through presentations like this. The other one, through horse performances. And other times we do it through parades. I am First Sergeant Fred Applewhite, the proud First Sergeant of the Buffalo Soldiers of the American West. M Troop. We'll call M Troop because we ride different color horses. In the cavalry, every troop has their own color horse. For instance, A Troop may have gray horses. B Troop may have sorrel. C Troop may have blacks. And when they got to M, they ran out of colored horses. So we became M Troop, the famed Calico Company. They served in states like Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Wyoming, Utah, North and South Dakota, Arizona, Nevada, Montana, Nebraska, and a place they call Colorado. As a matter of fact, between 1866 and 1888, there were over 8,000 Buffalo Soldiers out here in the West. What did they do? They did whatever the United States government told them to do. They were soldiers. There are three theories as to how these men got their name. One, when the Native Americans first saw this new and different soldier in Montana riding across the plains, they covered themselves to stay warm with buffalo robes. And as they rode and the natives looked from a distance, they saw they looked like buffalo. But as they got closer and closer and closer, they realized they were not buffalo at all. They were this new kind of soldier, Dutch buffalo soldier. The second theory is when they came into combat with this new and different looking soldier, he fought so hard and so fierce, even when mortally wounded, he refused to stop fighting. It reminded them of their most sacred animal, the buffalo. And the third theory is when they first saw this soldier who looked different. They noticed that the hair on the soldier's head reminded them of the hair between the horns of the buffalo. I will show you, but I don't have any hair. You know, the Buffalo Soldiers was commanded by white officers. When the white officer chose to command the black regiment, they would automatically get a raise in rank. And that was to entice qualified officers to command black troops. One officer was offered control and command of the 9th Cavalry. This officer turned it down. This officer chose the 7th Cavalry instead. This officer's name is George Armstrong Custer. And until this day, the 9th Cavalry is so glad he chose the 7th and not the 9th. I want to talk about the most important piece of equipment that a cavalryman has. Can anyone think of that? Raise your hand if you know. The most important piece of equipment for a cavalryman. The horse. Because if you're in the cavalry and you don't have a horse, what are you? Infantry. So that most important piece of equipment is that horse. And you better take care of that horse first. The first thing a trooper does after he unsaddles his horse is to get the curry comb. And the horse has had the saddle on him all day, and he's sweaty, and the dirt and the mud, and he gets wet and he gets hard. And you take the curry comb and you break it up. All over, you break that dirt off the top. And then after you break the dirt, you take your horsehair brush and you brush all that dirt off. So now his back is nice and clean for that morning. You check his hoofs. This is called a hoof pick. You've had rocks in your shoes before, right? And you walk and you go, ooh, that hurt. You know? Well, that happens to a horse too. And if your horse does like this, what is going to happen to you? You're going to walk. And you do not want to walk. So you clean those hoofs up. What are you going to do with them after it's clean? You got to feed them. They have to eat all night. So how did they keep that horse so they can catch them the next morning and not have to walk? A hobble, yes, ma'am. The hobble, it's not brutal. You put the hobble front leg here, the other front leg there, and Dakota can eat all night. And when you go catch him, he can't run away from you. You can catch him, take the hobble off, saddle him up, and you're good for today's ride. You know, as I said, the horse was the most important part that a soldier could have. And I want to show you something. We have fingernails and toenails. Well, a horse's hoof is a fingernail and a toenail. So you have to protect that out in the wild. And there are two types of horses. I always tell them that we have the semis who use these shoes. Oh, wow. But if you notice the difference in shape, see the difference in shape? You know why? Why? This is the front shoe. This is the rear shoe. If we take John Ward's horse and cut him in half, the heaviest part of the horse is to the front. The lightest part is to the back. So the front feet are bigger and wider. So the shoes are shaped differently. Not only on the semis, but on the race horses as well, the one that we ride. See, the shoes are shaped the same. Front shoe, rear shoe. Protect the horse. A lot of people believe that when the cavalry was out in the field and they ran into a conflict, they just pull out their pistols and rifles and start shooting. Very seldom did they fight on horseback. Very seldom. They preferred not to. So when the battle was about to occur, every trooper had what is known as a link strap. that goes on the side of the headstall, which I'll talk about shortly. It hooks to the side of the headstall. And once you got ready to go into battle, you would take, the fourth soldier would take 3 horses to the rear. 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, 1, 2, 3, 4, boom. They go to the rear. And they would hook them with these when they got off. So the one trooper had 3 horses, the next trooper had 3 horses, and why do you think they took them to the rear? That's right, the Native Americans were not stupid. They knew if they shot the horse, you can't chase them. So they moved them to the rear to make sure they were safe. Didn't always happen that way because pretty soon they got smart to know if they're going to move them to the rear, we'll just attack from the rear. Not hard to figure out, but that's part of it. I want to give you a little idea about part of the frustration and the positivity that came from being a Buffalo Soldier or any soldier out here in the West. You know, the United States Army believed in one size fits all. But when they came west, they began to understand that these soldiers were going to face temperatures that were -10 degrees or 110 degrees. What were they going to eat? What could you have that would be universal in Arizona and Montana? So the Army came up with 3 things. 1, beans. As long as beans are dry, they don't care how cold it gets or how hot it gets. That was the staple. 2, coffee. The water was so bad you had to do something with it. So coffee was the second staple. And the third one that kept them alive, we call hardtack. Hardtack. Water, salt, flour. You know why I call it hardtack? Because it's hard. And it never spoils. This hardtack is 15 years old. And it's good to eat. Except 10,000 students had their hand on it. To enhance their meals and the coffee, the Army would issue what is known as brown sugar. And what the soldier would do would take his coffee, his knife, and shave it off into his cup. That way, when he drank his coffee, it didn't taste near as bad. Still was nasty, but not near as bad as a straight water. But when you go traveling, if you are going to go from here to Trinidad, Colorado, what are you going to pack in? What are you going to put your stuff in? Suitcase, right? Buffalo soldiers didn't have suitcases. Cavalrymen didn't have suitcases. They have what they call saddlebags. And on one side of the saddlebag, you went your extra shirt, pair of socks, your housewife. You know what a housewife is? Well, you know, when they were out, they had to take care of their own clothes. You got a hole in your clothes, you pull your housewife out. And you sew it up. Housewife is needles and thread. You sewed your uniform up. That's on one side. On the other side, the most important thing, the information and tools you need to maintain your horse so that you can continue to complete your mission. So when the soldiers were out, and on a 5-day campaign, in this uniform, this was their winter uniform. This was their summer uniform. This was their spring uniform. This was their fall uniform. So when they got back to the fort and they pulled the uniforms off, generally they stood there by themselves. So they would have to take the uniform to the laundry. And that were those ladies, bless their heart, smart, who followed the cavalry around for three primary reasons. One, if you're in a cavalry unit, you're safe. Nobody's going to mess with you. Who's going to attack a whole company of cavalry? No one. Two, you can make a little money by taking care of the uniform. Three, you might be able to land a husband. Three good reasons to be involved with the regiment back then, because females back then, your job opportunities were very, very limited. Very limited. And this was a good, safe, sound place for them to go. But once they were there, they would take the uniform to the laundry. And the laundries would take the uniform and lye soap. You ever heard of that? It's made out of animal fat and grease and lye. They would go with it, the clothing, with their little washing machine here. This is a washing machine. They go rinse it off, do it some more with the lye soap till they got it clean enough. Once they got it clean enough, they would take the clothes dryer. This is the clothes dryer. They'd wring it through there. So I don't want to wring my leg through there. Wring it through there. Once you got that, they'd hang it up. If they had a clothesline, if they're there long enough, they'd hang it up on the clothesline. If not, any bush would do. They'd hang it up in the bush. And once it dried, the laundry ladies would then get the prehistoric iron to start with. Heat it up, iron it. But then modern technology stepped in. And what they ended up with, a new creation. A steam iron! You take the top off here, put the red coals in here, put the water in here. As it drips down, you create steam, it comes out the side. Wow. Man, it's amazing. But I'm going to tell you the story right now about 3 Seminole Indian scouts who received the Congressional Medal of Honor. This happened in Texas, outside of Fort Davis. Officer by the name of Lieutenant John Bullis. They called him Whirlwind, because John Bullis was not afraid of anything. He commanded black troops in the Civil War. And he earned a reputation of no fight he couldn't win. But he's assigned by the post commander to go out and retrieve or find or locate 80 horses that had been stolen from a rancher. Billis was in charge of the Seminole Indian Scouts. Now, the Seminole Indian Scouts were those individuals, scouts, soldiers rather, who went down and escaped from slavery, went down into the Everglades, and lived with the Seminole Indians. When Jackson moved them out of Florida into Oklahoma, the African-American part of the Seminole Indian Scouts went to Mexico. Because had they stayed, they could have easily been captured and put back into slavery. So they went to Mexico. Stayed in Mexico for years, and then when the army came down, suddenly, you come out here from Washington, D.C., you know everything. It gets dark at night, and you get lost. You go out on the trail thinking you're going to capture somebody. You have no idea where you are. So they figured out real quick, we better do something. So they realized that the Seminole Indian Scouts were down in Mexico. So they went down there and made a treaty with them to bring them back across the border. They were good hunters, because the army always needs to eat. They were good trappers. They were good trackers. They knew where the water holes were, and they also knew where the bad guy lived. Perfect marriage. So the army offered them land if they would, and pay if they would serve them as scouts. Sounds like a real good deal. So the Seminole Indian Scouts took that. But on this particular trip, Lieutenant Billis took 3 soldiers. Their names were Sergeant John Ward, Private Pompey Factor, and Trumpeter Isaac Payne. They went out searching for the herd that was stolen. The first day they went north, straight north, and they were looking to cut a trail. Because they didn't have no highways back there. They can't say, well, take Highway 52 and turn left or at Johnson Corner, and you'll find them right there. They didn't have that. The only way you can find someone is cut the trail. You cut the trail. You go and you stop. They drove 18 miles that first day they rode, and they had a hot camp. They had, guess what? Coffee, beans, and hardtack. The next morning they got up early. They went north by northwest. Traveled another 16, 17 miles and stopped down in this nice little valley where they had water running through and plenty of grass. Why would they need water and grass? The horses had to eat. You couldn't carry it with you. There was no semi for you to carry. They had a cold camp that night. They didn't want people to know they were there. The next morning they got up and continued north by northwest. About noon, they cut a trail that looked like the trail they were looking for. So they followed that trail. For 45 minutes they walked, and they got close enough to see, and there it was. It was guarded by 30 bad guys. Whirlwind didn't care. He wasn't afraid. He said, hey, boys, we got them outnumbered. And they attacked. For the first hour and 30 minutes, they had control of the herd. And then they see the bad guys start to outflank them. And then they start to retreat. They start to retreat to get to their mount. Once on their mount, Factor, Ward, and Payne took off up the hill. Ward looked back and saw that the lieutenant's horse had panicked, and they were closing in on him. John Ward said, hold it, boys. We can't leave the lieutenant. He whirled his horse around. Down the road they went. He picked up the lieutenant, and they took him off to safety. Because of those heroics, in battle, under heavy fire, John Ward, Pompey Factor, and Isaac Payne received the Medal of Honor. Just put that back, please. And when it's over with, you can see their pictures. This is a company of Seminole Indian Scouts. And above Ward's name, you will see the symbol Medal of Honor. One of 18 to 23, depending on who you talk to, that was received. Now, when they were at the fort and they had a break, what did they do besides maneuver? March, 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 march. But they had some time off. And when they had some time off, they would perhaps play cards. Hey, young man, what's wrong with these cards? You don't know? They don't have numbers. Perfect. You know why they didn't have numbers? Most of them couldn't count anyway. But they knew that this spot was bigger than this spot. They didn't say this was a 2 and this was a 4, but they knew this was bigger. So that's how they entertained themselves. All right, let's talk a little bit about communication. Now, they didn't have walkie-talkies. They didn't have that. They didn't have newspapers, telegraphs out here in the middle of nowhere. So when they were in battle and they were fighting and the confusion was reigning and you wanted to reorganize, how do you get 75 men to go back to their own company? Well, there are two ways you did it. One, if you had a white horse and your company rode white horses, you went where the white horses were. How do you know when to do that? They would use the bugle. The bugle will give the command to charge, retreat, whatever you needed to do. The bugler stood next to the officer, and the officer say, bugler, play recall. I tried that, it makes my jaws hurt. So I couldn't do it. Besides that, my spouse's teeth came out. That wasn't good either. But the bugle is how they communicate. Not walkie-talkie. Bugle. Everybody understood each bugle call and what it stood for. The other way they communicated is from fort to fort, they would send couriers. The couriers would put the bag on, mount his horse, and he would go. Rain, sleet, snow. A lot of times the courier didn't make it because their mission was to get the mail from one post to the next. If the river swelled and the courier, the soldier jumped in it and he lost his life, they wouldn't find him to the next spring. Sometimes that happened. But the mission was to complete the mission. They knew, these men they called Buffalo Soldiers knew, that they are going to be judged. The whole race was going to be judged by how they responded. They knew that. They understood it. That's why you look around. They had the lowest rate of desertion. There are many reasons for that. But one is we will not desert because deserting the army, we're letting down our people. To them, failure was not an option. You talking about all in. They were all in. 100%. I want to talk a little bit about, as we advance down, a little bit about a soldier that's very, very special. This soldier joined the 38th Infantry in Independence, Missouri. Marched with his company from Missouri to Lyons, New Mexico, on into Colorado. He's a good soldier. Did his job as well as he could do it. He joined the army under the name of William Cathy. William was a good soldier, as I said. Always on his post on time. Very helpful to the other troops. But one day, William got really, really sick. And William had to report to the post hospital. Once in the hospital, the doctor discovered changes. That William Cathy was not William Cathy at all. William Cathy was actually Cathy Williams, the only documented female Buffalo Soldier.